Science shouldn't feel like a closed door. Welcome to Human Verified, your backstage pass to the world of high-stakes research and the business of staying alive. My name is Gina Winchester, a Native American scientist, professor, author, and I've created this space where we swap dense academic jargon for fresh, no-nonsense insights. Whether I'm deconstructing pharmaceutical breakthroughs, clinical trials, or the how this is legal side of STEM business, I'm here to bridge the gap between the lab bench and your daily life. It's rigorous research met with real-world storytelling because understanding how science works is the ultimate power move. Drugs are expensive. Stop the gatekeepers. In my editorial Curing Cancer, I dive into the Human Verified reality check, talking about the massive gap between people who need treatment and those who can actually afford it. While that editorial includes information on how R&D affects drug prices, this editorial focuses on the major legislation and policies passed since the pandemic that dictate your access to quality drug interventions and the price tag attached. This is a rare note, but it's worth mentioning. I've included an overview of the sources I used for this editorial at the end of the page because this topic is often buried in political spin. For the record, I'm an independent, have been ever since my first vote at the tender age of 18. You may think I'll pull some of that political dog water here because my background as a scientist could skew me one way or the other. I hope to put that aside for this editorial. I intend to provide information only and start a discussion we desperately need to have about how our nation prices drugs. My Juris Masters from Florida State University focused on the legal side of healthcare, pharma, and R&D, and I believe it affords me the ability to approach this topic through a neutral, professional lens. I don't care about party lines. I care about how policy affects individuals. We're going to stick to the facts, what these pricing policies are, how they impact research, and what the next handful of years look like for Americans. What you'll discover. First, I'll briefly recap how drug pricing is set. Then we'll break down the three big legislative shifts since COVID-19. The Inflation Reduction Act, the One Big Beautiful Bill, and the Most Favored Nation strategies. I'll show you how each one ripples through the world of R&D and new therapy development. I will also briefly mention the newer GRACE, GUARD, and GLOBE pricing models, because these are likely to impact drug prices over the next 5 to 10 years. They deserve their own deep dive later, but they are essential pieces of the puzzle we're solving today. These policies affect how you access essential drug treatments for some of our most devastating diseases and conditions, and that is the human verified reality of it all. Let's get started. Look, I don't even see how they can even cost that much. When a drug company sits down to decide what a new medication will cost, they aren't just looking at the price of the ingredients in the pill. It's a complex mix of scientific gambling plus a close look at what the competition is charging. This is where we expand on the topics from Curing Cancer, because R&D costs are really just the starting point for a much larger conversation about risk and value in drug pricing. The most important thing to understand about R&D is that you aren't just paying for the drug. You're paying for the 9 out of 10 clinical studies that failed. For every single success story, there are others that went bust after years of work and billions of dollars spent. When a company finally finds a winner, that one drug has to pay off the debt for the entire lab's history of losers. This includes the cost of late-stage clinical trials where thousands of people are tested, and the opportunity cost, which is the profit the company gave up by choosing this project over one another. Beyond the lab costs, companies are using something called value-based pricing. This is a controversial way of looking at what a drug is worth to society. The logic goes like this. If a new pill can cure a rare disease that would have otherwise required $1 million surgery and a lifetime of hospital visits, the company might argue that charging $300,000 is actually a bargain. They are essentially trying to put a price tag on a year of healthy life and setting their rate based on how much money they are saving the healthcare system in the long run. Then there is the reality of the ticking clock. In the US, a company usually gets a 20-year exclusivity on a new invention. However, it takes more than a decade to test the drug and get it approved, so the company might only have 7 or 8 years left to be the only seller on the market. This creates a frantic rush to recoup all those billions in R&D and turn a profit before cheaper generic copies are allowed to exist. They also look at the competitors. If someone else's heart medication costs $500 a month, then a new, slightly better version will probably be priced just a little bit higher. They have to find a sweet spot where the price is high enough to satisfy investors, but not so high that the insurance companies can't cover it. It's a delicate balance of trying to fund future breakthroughs while navigating the competitive reality of the modern medical market. We'll only touch on a few things in the Inflation Reduction Act of August 22. In the last 5 years, the way we calculate drug prices in America has shifted from a Wild West approach to a system that actually has guardrails. To understand how it works today, you have to look past the sticker price you see on the news. In reality, drug pricing is a delicate game of list versus net. While drug companies set a high public price, insurance companies and middlemen negotiate secret discounts behind the scenes. The real price, the one that the company actually keeps, has been drifting further away from that sticker price for years. The biggest change came in 2022 with the Inflation Reduction Act. Think of this law as the new inflation police for pharmacy shelves. If a company tries to hike a drug price faster than the general cost of living, it can't just pocket the extra cash anymore. The IRA says they have to pay that surplus back to the government as a penalty. This was designed to kill those sudden, massive price jumps that used to happen twice a year. For the first time, the government is also allowed to pull up a chair and haggle. Now that we've reached 2026, the prices for the 10 most expensive, commonly used drugs like those for diabetes and blood clots have been negotiated down directly. This list isn't a one-time thing. It's going to grow by about 15 to 20 drugs every single year. If a company refuses to play ball, they face a massive tax or lose access to the entire Medicare market, which gives the government some serious leverage. For the person standing at the pharmacy counter, the math has become much more human. Beginning last year, there is now a $2,000 limit on what anyone on Medicare has to pay out of pocket for their prescriptions in a year. Once someone hits that limit, the insurance and drug companies have to cover the rest. There's also an option that lets people spread those costs out in predictable monthly payments rather than getting hit with one giant bill in January. Beyond that, there's a $35 monthly limit on insulin, and for common vaccines like the one for shingles, they've now completely made it free for seniors. By taking the financial burden away from the patient and moving it to the companies and the government's negotiating power, the system is finally prioritizing stability over profit. It's a major change toward making sure that the scientific innovation is actually affordable for the people who need it most. The Big Beautiful Bill's impact on drug pricing. While the 2022 law sets the stage for lower drug prices, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act from 2025 has stepped in to tweak the formula. Think of it as a set of delay buttons for certain high-priced medications. This law changes the rules for which drugs the government can haggle over and when those negotiations can actually start. One of the biggest changes involves what are known as orphan drugs, which are medicines created to treat very rare diseases. Originally, the government promised not to touch the price of these drugs as long as they only treated one rare condition. The new 2025 law expands that hall pass, essentially saying that even if a drug is approved to treat multiple rare diseases, it can still stay exempt from price negotiations for longer. This is a big deal for cancer treatments like Keytruda and Opdivo. These two drugs alone cost Medicare billions of dollars recently, but because of these new rules, the government likely won't be able to negotiate their prices until at least 2027. Whether that's good or bad is beyond the scope of this article. It's something we'll just have to wait and see because honestly, it's such a complex thing that we don't know what impact that will have. On top of all of this, the current administration is trying a different tactic to lower costs by looking at what other countries pay. Through new programs with names like GUARD and GLOBE, the U.S. is pushing for a most favored nation pricing. The idea is simple. The U.S. shouldn't have to pay way more for the exact same pill than people do in Europe or Canada. They are looking to set a benchmark so that if a drug is cheaper overseas, we get that same price here at home. In short, the landscape is shifting again. While we are still seeing the benefits of the original price caps and the inflation checks, this newer legislation acts as a stabilizer, protecting some specialized medical research from price cuts, while simultaneously trying to disentangle the U.S. drug supply from foreign competitors. It's a massive ongoing effort to keep medicine affordable without accidentally slowing down the next big scientific breakthrough that could save lives. The Trump RX program so far. The drug pricing world has another player, TrumpRx.gov. Launched in February 2026 as part of the Make America Healthy Again initiative, this platform opens up lower prices to almost everyone, including people with job-based insurance or no coverage at all. The system works with priced match deals. The government reached a voluntary agreement with big drug makers to match the lowest prices found in other healthy countries. How do the Biden versus Trump administration approaches differ since COVID-19? While the political playbooks look different, both Trump and Biden administrations have been working towards the same goal, ending the era where drug companies set any price they want without a fight. The main difference lies in how they shop for a deal. The Trump strategy acts like a price match guarantee at a big box store, trying to tie U.S. prices to the lower rates seen in other wealthy countries, so Americans stop overpaying compared to the rest of the world. In contrast, the Biden approach focused on direct, hard bargaining, where the government sits at the table and uses its massive power to demand a fair price based on how much the drug actually costs to make. The difference also shows up in how they handle the middlemen and where they want the drugs to be made. One strategy targets the secret discounts kept by insurance middlemen to push savings directly to your pharmacy counter, while the other penalizes drug makers if they hike prices faster than inflation. Similarly, while one side demands that all medicine be manufactured physically on U.S. soil, the other is open to friendshoring, relying on trusted allies like Japan or the EU to keep the supply chain safe. By now, these two paths have actually started to merge. The current administration has kept the negotiating rules in place while adding the price match idea on top. In some cases, like with the weight loss drug Ozempic, this price matching has actually led to even lower costs than direct negotiation. Ultimately, regardless of the specific tactic, the government is now using every tool available, from international benchmarks to boardroom haggling, to ensure medicine remains affordable to everyone. MFN versus IRA for the top 5 essential drugs in the USA. To help you see how these two systems play out in the real world, here is a breakdown of the final price for 5 of the most common medications. It's important to remember that IRA, the negotiated price, is what Medicare pays, while MFN, or TrumpRx.gov, is often a voluntary deal between the government and the manufacturer for cash payers or state programs. Sometimes one is cheaper, sometimes it's the other. You can see the pattern, right? At the end of the day, all of these separate decisions are swirling together to move the needle on what we actually pay for medicine. Every legislative trick or executive order hits a different drug in a different way. When you hear people in the political world framing this as Trump versus Biden, battle of winners and losers, they're just looking for a soundbite or a viral post. The human verified reality is much more nuanced. Both approaches have their strengths, and they often end up complementing each other. One might lower the price of your blood thinner, while the other finally makes your insulin affordable. Since 2020, both administrations have found ways to chip away at these costs, but the real progress happens in the sum total of all those efforts. It's not about which political party wins, it's about the fact that we're finally seeing downward pressure on prices that used to only go up. The key is to stay engaged with the people writing the policies and the agencies regulating the labs. That continued vigilance is the only way to ensure the rules keep evolving so you can actually get the care you need for your own real living body. You said something about Medicare and then private insurance, but I don't know what that means. To understand how drug prices actually hit your wallet, you have to look at which world of insurance you live in. If you are over 65 and eligible for Medicare, the rules are now strict and predictable. There is a hard ceiling on costs, capped at $2,000 out of pocket in a single year, with some monthly payment options. Medicare is also required to hunt for the best deal, automatically using whichever is lower, the government's negotiated price or the global price match. If you have private insurance through work, your costs are a bit more of a moving target. While your insurance company tries to negotiate its own discounts, you usually have to clear a deductible first, often paying the full negotiated price yourself until that hurdle is met. After that, you typically just pay a flat copay. For children on state programs like Medicaid, the news is even better. They receive the deepest discounts in the country, often bringing the cost down to nearly zero. Even for the uninsured, new price match platforms are acting like a lifeline, offering a way to bypass the gargantuan sticker prices seen in the past. Essentially, the government is now acting as an anchor, pulling costs down for everyone. The new approaches to drug pricing: GRACE, GLOBE, and GUARD models. To keep medicine affordable without stalling new cures, the government is testing 2 price-matched plans, GUARD and GLOBE. These programs stop drugs from being overpriced the very first day they hit the shelf by comparing U.S. costs to a basket of 19 other wealthy countries. If our price is way higher than the international average, the drug company has to pay a refund back to Medicare. Generally, GLOBE handles expensive specialty treatments given at a doctor's office, while GUARD covers the everyday pills you get at the pharmacy. But how do you decide what a fair price is? A new system called GRACE says that instead of treating every patient the same, it recognizes that a medicine is worth more to society if it saves someone who is severely ill or disabled. This creates a balance. While GUARD and GLOBE pull down prices to match the rest of the world, grace ensures we still reward the value of a breakthrough cure. Ultimately, we're moving towards a society where a drug's price is tied to what the world pays and how much it actually changes a life for the better. How does all of this impact R&D and your ability to get the intervention you need? The way we pay for medicine is changing the very future of what we'll find in our medicine cabinets. While the goal is to make drugs affordable now, we're seeing a change in how new cures are created. Because the government can now negotiate prices or price match cheaper costs from other countries, the negotiation clock for a drug starts the moment it hits the shelf. This gives companies a much shorter window to earn back their billion-dollar investments. This ticking clock is pushing scientists to change their focus. Traditional pills only get 9 years of protection before the government can cut the price, while complex injectable biologics, like those we talked about in curing cancer, get 13. Naturally, money is flowing towards the biologics then to gain those extra 4 years of profit. The worry is that this will kill the type of research where one medication can be used for other applications, like when a heart medication is eventually tested to see if it treats Alzheimer's. If the profit window is too short, companies simply won't pay for those long-term studies. In the world of cancer research, the strategy is shifting from one at a time to all at once. Instead of releasing a drug for one rare cancer and slowly testing it for others, companies are waiting longer so they can launch for multiple types of cancer at the same time to maximize their protected years. Meanwhile, brain health is at a crossroads. While the government is pumping more money into Alzheimer's, private investors are nervous because those drugs are at the primary target for Medicare price cuts. Ultimately, the industry is moving away from daily pills for seniors and towards complex one-time therapies and treatments for younger people. Since these diseases affect a wider age range, companies have more time to earn a profit before Medicare's rules kick in. But that approach has ethical issues because, of course, seniors deserve the best care too. Our society cannot withstand the health degradation of our nation's seniors, either ethically or financially. There are just too many of them, and age-related decline is simply too expensive. The math just ain't mathing. Healthy is always cheaper than sickness in America. The human verified perspective. You can start to see the dilemma here, right? These changes are a big deal because they're finally closing the old loopholes that let prices skyrocket. We're finally sitting down at the table for price negotiations that were literally illegal a few years ago, and we're taking a real swing at the biggest problems in the industry. But there's a catch. Because of the specific way these new laws are written, the scientific world is having to pivot. Instead of focusing on the complex health needs of seniors, a lot of research is refocusing on the young or the rare disease profile simply because of all these changes from both administrations. It feels a bit like taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Now, don't get me wrong. That's still progress. Moving forward at any speed is better than staying stuck, but it isn't quite the lightning-fast pace we need if we're going to truly transform how much it costs to stay healthy in America. The reality is that these aren't just boring pharma policies or soundbite written political debates. These decisions affect real people with real lives and real bodies. In our democracy, the way a sentence is worded in a law is usually where the rubber meets the road. Any single tiny detail in a bill can determine whether a scientist spends the next decade hunting for a cure for Alzheimer's or a treatment for a common skin condition. That's why it's so important to stay vigilant. We have to keep engaging with our policymakers and regulatory bodies to make sure those tiny details don't get overlooked. At the end of the day, the goal is to make sure the system is designed so that when you're sick, you can actually get the care you need to fight whatever's ailing you. Thank you for spending this time with me today.